2-minute introductory remarks, and we will begin with Mr. Jacque. We'll begin with Mr. Frostman.
Good morning. My name is Caleb Frostman. I am the senator for the 1st Senate District. I grew up in Green Bay. I currently live in Sturgeon Bay. Prior to getting into politics this spring, I was the executive director at the Door County Economic Development Corporation, where we focused on workforce development initiatives, specifically with our youth, provided strong entrepreneurial support, and also a myriad of other economic development programs that help businesses large and small. And prior to that, I was in commercial real estate finance, financing apartment buildings, shopping centers, office buildings, those kind of things across the country. And it was that experience in the private sector, as well as my service to my community, probably most formatively as a big brother in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program for 5.5 years, that really opened my eyes and led me to believe that the biggest way I could have an impact to improve the quality of life of folks around me was in drafting and molding policy and legislation. And so that's what led me to run back in March, and that's what is continuing to drive me going forward, having a strong desire to improve the quality of life of folks around me here in the 1st Senate District. So thank you for being here today.
Mr. Jacque, you now have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. I'm Andre Jacque. I'm the state representative for the 2nd Assembly District, which is in southern Brown County and northern Manitowoc County. I live in De Pere with my wife and kids, and that's why I'm running, to make a better, brighter future for my kids and their kids, and hopefully that they'll choose to raise their families here in Northeast Wisconsin as well, with safe communities, better job opportunities. Really very proud of the work that I've been able to do across the aisle as well on things like domestic violence and human trafficking, drunk driving, worker training, including for youth workforce development, to veterans, the disabled. Yeah, this is really an important contrast that we have before us today in styles and philosophies. I'm very appreciative of having the League of Women Voters extend this opportunity. In fact, there were a couple other debate opportunities that I chose to avail myself to that unfortunately my opponent chose to send out a statement attacking me for wanting to sit behind a desk, or I guess a table in this case. That's unfortunate. I think that these offer opportunities for voters to be able to discern differences between candidates. I think that there's a very clear difference as well that very recently was shown with some confusion within municipal planning organizations for transportation dollars. There was a story. I contacted my local officials. I contacted the Department of Transportation, contacted the Legislative Fiscal Bureau for an independent analysis, which was done for Senator Rob Coles, and the Cap Times said that it was a miscommunication, the money wasn't missing. My opponent chose to put out launch partisan attacks within a press release that basically said that the money had disappeared. I like to think that there's a real difference there, so look forward to talking today. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. In our alternating format, Mr. Jacque will have the first question this morning. Mr. Jacque, what actions would you support to promote the greatest possible access of Wisconsin citizens to voting?
Well, I think certainly a large part of it is getting information out to voters and that they see the opportunities to really have their voice count and greater information that's available to them. I know that that is something where I've stayed very positive in the messaging from myself and my campaign throughout this entire process. Unfortunately, my opponent chose to engage in suppression calls to my supporters, actually intimidating some people that had yard signs, and these were actual state Senate Democrat officials as well. So I think it's very important that our actions mirror our rhetoric, and that's something that my opponent was on Fox 11 saying that he was grateful for the outside money that was coming into this campaign. I prefer that as we basically are able to talk to voters directly. I know that one of the people here ran into him yesterday in Calumet County, said he was going to be here today. I think that's fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. I think it's fantastic that this is going to be available online for people to hear from us. But I go door to door searching for ideas and opportunities to answer questions, and I think that's really one of the best ways to increase voter participation.
Mr. Frostman, the same question to you. What actions would you support to promote the greatest possible access of Wisconsin citizens to voting?
Yeah, great question. So I do believe that in this state it's really important to remember we're a democracy and that we should be led by representative government, that we should take every possible action to make sure that folks have the opportunity to vote. And just looking at some of the actions that have taken place in the last 7 years in Wisconsin, it's clear to me that I would rather invite more people to vote, make sure that folks, whether it's seniors, college students, have access to vote in this state, and I'd rather win on the merits of my argument than take away their ability to vote. So we've seen in the state of Wisconsin some pretty explicit voter suppression among marginalized communities, and that's frustrating to me. As a citizen who wants my voice to be heard, I too worn through 2 pairs of shoes, knocking on doors, talking to voters throughout the district. And folks want to make sure their voice is heard. That's what this country was founded on. That's why it's a republic. That's why it's a democracy. So making sure folks have the greatest access in all communities, all citizens have their voice heard in Wisconsin is incredibly important to me as a senator.
The next question goes first to Mr. Frostman. Please describe 2 or 3 of your priorities for your term in office and how you will effectively address those issues.
Yeah, so talking to folks in the doors over the last 6 months, we've heard a myriad of concerns. The top one I hear about from nearly everyone along the political spectrum is the cost of health care in this state. It's ridiculous that in the most advanced country in the world in 2018 that folks literally choose between paying their rent and their groceries and paying for the health insurance premiums. I have close friends and family who choose to go uninsured because it costs just as much to pay for prescription pills without insurance as it does with a $1,000 premium. So taking the Medicaid expansion to the full level possible, the state came up short compared to other states. We could have expanded it further. That allowed folks, single folks making $16,000 a year access Medicaid dollars, or a family of 4 making $25,000, which is still a poverty wage in this day and age. It's a strong priority for me. Another one that we hear a lot about are natural resources. I believe strongly in the depoliticization of our DNR. It's really frustrating to me as a business person and an outdoors person to see the mentality of opening Wisconsin for business having to degrade and exploit our natural resources. Those 2 things don't have to be in the same sentence. And the other for me would be making sure that we invest in quality jobs, that obviously quantity is really important, but anytime taxpayer dollars are being used to incent companies or jobs to come to Wisconsin in this current economy where unemployment is so low and more folks are working than ever, it is extremely important, and I would like to see the state prioritize putting upward pressure on wages in the state to make sure folks can enjoy a higher quality of life. And so my solution for that is increased job training. I've been very vocal in this campaign and in my prior career in economic development, making sure that we communicate the viability of careers in the trades, that there is a living wage to be made there without a lot of times the gargantuan amounts of student debt. And so those are options I look at as how we can improve the quality of life for folks that put in 40 or a lot of times more hours than that per week.
Mr. Jacque, same question to you. Please describe 2 or 3 of your priorities for your term in office and how you will effectively address those issues.
Sure. Well, one of the things that I've been able to do, again, in working across the aisle over the past several sessions, is you see legislation that I propose, and sometimes it might take 2nd or 3rd session, but I've actually been able to get very significant pieces of legislation passed. And I'm going to continue on legislation that I previously introduced, as well as a number of bills that I'm working on right now in regards to victims' rights, human trafficking, of course, always drunk driving and domestic violence. And public safety is very important. And that's just something personally that I put a lot of effort into that doesn't necessarily have a really large lobby interest behind it, although I am very pleased to be the Legislator of the Year for both the Wisconsin Professional Police Association and the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association for my efforts in that area. Infrastructure is very important. Advocating to make sure that Northeast Wisconsin gets its fair share, things like the Southern Bridge into Pier, things like potentially the 41 expansion between Wrightstown and Appleton. But beyond that, I think people want to see continued economic growth. They want to, well, certainly acknowledging the challenges that we have in front of us in terms of workforce development. We have wage growth in Wisconsin that is outpacing the national average significantly. We want to see that continue. I've worked very hard on regional economic growth opportunities as opposed to having communities compete against each other. I've worked very hard within the trades for the Tools of the Trade program, which actually got on a bipartisan basis through the Assembly and through Senate Committee. That directly helps the trades to the tech colleges. I've worked on youth apprenticeship and apprenticeship reimbursement. Also worked on reciprocity with neighboring states so that we can bring skilled workers into Wisconsin. I'd like to continue to reform things like the MAP program for individuals with disabilities so that they are able to, as fully as possible, participate in the workforce. So, thank you very much.
Next question goes first to Mr. Jacque. What will you do to actively promote civility and cooperative problem solving in Wisconsin politics?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that we see is some very heightened rhetoric in terms of what makes it on the airwaves or some of the speeches that are made on the floor of the Assembly or the Senate. I think what I've always tried to do is to work collaboratively across the aisle, bring in a lot of different stakeholders. I've been very successful with that. If you look at the bipartisan successes and the bipartisan support for the vast majority of my legislation, it's something that there are Democratic bills that I've signed on to. There are Democratic proposals that I've supported or amendments on the floor of the Assembly. I do have a reputation of being somebody who is one of the more independent members of the legislature and somebody who can work with anyone. That includes my own leadership. I actually ended up losing my committee chairmanship for standing up to my own party leadership. That was something that I did on behalf of the people of my district and my own principals. I'm very pleased to have done that. And you know, if I have one committee chairmanship to give for greater civility, I mean, there were people that maybe criticized the fact that as former chair of the Labor Committee, I allowed hearings to go on long to make sure that everybody's voices were heard. But I made that commitment and been very strong in doing that. I've had listening sessions in every corner of the district and have multiple opportunities where I don't screen any questions and everybody can ask as many questions as they want as long as there's nobody waiting that hasn't had one that's been answered yet, or asked yet. So, see how time's winding down, so I'll just end it there. Thank you.
Mr. Frostman, same question. What will you do to actively promote civility and cooperative problem solving in Wisconsin politics?
Yes, I'm very grateful to have some experience in this endeavor. I look to my private sector experience, both in banking, working in a fairly stressful environment with aggressive clients looking to finance. You know, there's not necessarily risky deals, but there's risk in every deal, and really ardent credit approvers looking to protect the bank's capital and trying to find win-win solutions where the borrower can earn the return they're looking for, the bank's capital is protected, and the bank earns its return. And I also look to my time in economic development, where I worked with government officials of all political stripes, electeds, teachers, business owners, students, and I really feel strongly that my track record will show that when you put the mission above partisan politics and partisan ranking, you can get some great things done. And I plan on doing the same thing in the state legislature. I have been thus far, and I'm really grateful that my circle of friends and my circle of family is really diverse politically, and so our Thanksgiving conversations are very civil, even if we have different yard signs in our front yard. But it's good practice, and I think that the people that I care about and love think differently than me. And if I can seek to understand why they feel that way versus trying to make them understand me, that leads to greater civility. And I've had some good conversations, and I think we've accomplished a fair amount here in Door County in my past private sector experience as well.
Next question is first to Mr. Frostman. Regarding the topic of money in politics, will you support the state bill that would allow Wisconsin voters to express their views regarding political contributions only from human beings or contributions from humans and corporations, unions, etc.?
Can you repeat that one time, okay?
Sure.